saw that. Brick killed a guy.
Squid Game.
Squid Game.
Squid Game.
Squid Game.
Squid Game. Squid Game.
Squid Game.
Squid Game.
Squid Game.
Squid Game.
Yes.
Hang on. Squid Game.
Squid Game has been the biggest hit in Netflix history. Netflix is no stranger to massive success, but nothing has come close to the transcendent cultural phenomenon that was Squid Game. It was 2021's biggest show and still gets attention to this day. Video games, YouTube videos, a new reality show coming, Squid Game remains a global cultural landmark. With so much success and international obsession, it would be foolish for Netflix not to renew the show for a second season, which they announced in June of 2022. Unfortunately, I think any continuation of Squid Game will only tarnish the legacy of one of the most culturally relevant shows in the last decade. What could have remained a massive standalone hit will go out with a whimper, as so many great shows do. Squid Game Season 2 seems destined to disappoint fans, and the reason for that should be obvious to anyone who watched the first season. Before we get into why Season 2 will fail, let's talk about why the first season was so popular. Spoilers ahead. For starters, Western culture has been embracing more and more Asian media in recent years. K-pop, anime, you name it, and Netflix has largely been the entry point for a lot of new fans. Hardcore anime fans might turn their nose at Netflix viewers, but it's hard to deny that Netflix is responsible for bringing a wider global audience to anime. More specifically to Squid Game, K-pop artists have stan followings that now span the globe, opening more and more doors for Korean media in the Western market. Battle royales and the survival game concept have been invading popular culture for years before Squid Game came out as well, further priming a potential audience for an eventual mainstream hit in the space. Squid Game wasn't the first piece of media to develop the concept, but it benefited from timing and a knowledgeable audience that was eager to consume Korean media. That doesn't fully explain the widespread success that Squid Game enjoyed, but it did prime a key audience that allowed the show to instantly hit the mainstream and get over the subtitle barrier that so many foreign language shows run into. Of course, none of this audience preparation would matter if Squid Game was a bad show. It did an amazing job of setting up the main character, conflict, and mysterious concept that would drive viewers to continue watching and spread the word. Gi-hoon was the perfect vehicle for the story of Squid Game, a degenerate gambling addict who needed something to turn his life around. The juxtaposition of kids' games being a life and death battle was a novel take on the death games concept. But over everything else, the setting was probably what Squid Game did the best. The sets, colors, faceless overlords, and eerie music led to a truly unsettling environment, which pushed viewers to want to know everything they could about this world. All of this, combined with the performances from some of the key characters in the show, it's easy to see why Squid Game caught on. But that doesn't mean it's perfect. There were some pretty big holes in the show. Before I get into that, let me give you my perspective as a viewer so you know where I'm coming from. I think Squid Game is wildly overrated. It's decent and worth a watch if you're looking for something new, but it's not worthy of the title of Netflix's greatest show. The first 2 acts are great, but it takes a hard downturn from there. Again, it's not like I hate the show or anything. I think it's pretty good, but I also think the global hype machine surrounding Squid Game will work against it when it comes time for season 2. Fans are fickle, and turning what should be a widely beloved miniseries into a franchise has failed before. Looking at you, Westworld. The final act of Squid Game was where things really began to fall apart. The interesting concepts that the show set up need resolutions, and the resolutions we get are pretty underwhelming. As soon as we meet our core group of characters, the plot armor they receive removes most of the suspense from the games. Gi-hoon is the protagonist, so he's obviously safe. Likeable characters like Il-nam, Ali, and Se-byok eventually have to die, but clearly not within the first few games. The same could be said for the antagonists. They'll eventually die, but we know that their deaths will happen at a more significant time. That's all fine, but it means the main thing driving viewers forward is the B-plot involving Junho operating behind the scenes of the game, searching for his missing brother. After all, the why and the how are the most interesting questions the Squid Game presents. Unfortunately, answering these questions is one of Squid Game's worst qualities. Junho is eventually killed by his brother after revealing that he's the frontman. Very little resolution on this one, but surprising nonetheless. The Saw-like twist of Il-nam being behind the games the whole time was interesting as well, but the reason he gave for creating the games was underwhelming at best. In the end, it's all just a bunch of bored rich people who essentially see the struggling contestants as less than human. Il-nam gives some half-hearted rationalization about Squid Game giving these people as much, if not more, of a chance than society does, but it doesn't do much to change the fact that, in the audience's eyes, those funding and creating a Squid Game have to be some of the most sadistic people on the planet. A hard turn for such a likable character like Il-nam. The writers of the show set up the rationale behind Squid Game to be something that the audience can sympathize with, at least a little. More like Thanos than Voldemort. We're led to think that this isn't just people being evil for the sake of it. If that was the case, then why would so many regular people be willing to gun down their fellow man? Squid Game is damn near an industry. If the brutality is as unjustified as it ends up being, then why would all these people participate in it? What's more, why would a former winner come back and help win the game? Up until Ilnam tells us why he created Squid Game, we're led to think that there's some greater good rationalization coming, and there just isn't. It's the simplest explanation for why Squid Game exists: bored rich people who have enough money to fund a death game for the poors. If this was the best reason the writers had for creating Squid Game, I think it would have been more interesting if they hadn't revealed it, letting the audience theorize for themselves. Any fan theory would probably be more interesting than a bunch of bored rich people betting on the lower class like they're horses. That brings me to the VIPs, and I'm not going to spend much time on them. They spoke like Skyrim NPCs, and their goofy dialogue undercut any remaining creepiness the show had, during my favorite of the games at that. Even the most diehard fans of Squid Game can admit that the VIPs were terrible, and their performances felt jarringly out of place in such a well-produced show. I'm not really sure what happened here, but these fellas were hard to watch.
What convinced you to bet so much on number 69?
Oh, it's such a beautiful number! 69!
Oh, you dirty dog.
I also disliked the characterization and presentation of Sang-woo. It felt like the writers had removed his redeemability in order for Gi-hun to kill him in the end, and I completely disagree with that approach. Making Sang-woo a bad guy felt like a cop-out. The guy doesn't need to be a saint, he can be a corrupt, shady businessman and still have a good heart. If he did, it would bring extra weight to Gi-hun killing him in the end. Imagine if Sang-woo ended up being a good guy, that if he and Gi-hun grew closer before their eventual battle. That would add another layer of heartbreak to Gi-hun and would give him more of a motivation to come back and fight the creators of the games. Which leads me to my next point. The motivation for Gi-hun coming back and trying to stop the game seems incredibly shaky. Yeah, he's traumatized and probably wants some revenge, but it's nothing short of a suicide mission from his perspective. He's a father who presumably wants to do right by his daughter. Isn't that a pretty big reason why he came back in the first place? By trying to stop Squid Game, he's leaving her there, disappointed, again, for no other reason than to keep the door open for a season 2. And what will that season be? We already know who the creator and frontman are. We already know why the games were created in the first place. Gi-hun is the only main character left alive by the end. So what's left? There's no mystery, no suspense. Season 1 wrapped everything up. Apart from Gi-hun's reunion with his daughter, there's nothing left the audience needs to see. Have you ever heard the phrase, leave them wanting more? That's what Squid Game could have done. Instead, they're trying to catch lightning in a bottle a second time. I'll be completely honest now. Squid Game's popularity made me a bit salty. It's not like I have some deeply refined palate for content either. I count Avengers Endgame as one of my favorite movies of all time. Its success irritated me because of another foreign Netflix show, Dark. Dark is in the discussion for my favorite show ever. For me, it tops Breaking Bad. I'm not even going to tell you what it's about. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor and watch it right now. Dark is in German. Like Squid Game, English speakers will need to watch it with subtitles or dubs. When Dark was still making new episodes, I would tell everyone I could to watch the show. It's the single most mind-bending, engaging plot lines I've ever seen in a show. And each time, the person would respond with some version of, I don't like reading subtitles. And yet, all of these people watch Squid Game. Let's get real here. Squid Game and Dark aren't even in the same league when it comes to storytelling. I challenge anyone who watched both of these shows to honestly tell me they thought Squid Game was better. It just won't happen. Typically, I don't mind something that I find mediocre being widely popular, and it's not like Squid Game is terrible. This is all to say that the unprecedented levels of hype surrounding Squid Game irritated me because of how excellent and underrated Dark is. Dark deserved this level of attention and never got it. Meanwhile, Squid Game's meandering, mediocre story captivated the world and became Netflix's most successful show. I'm pretty sure I'll be vindicated when season 2 comes out, probably by the end of next year. I just can't see what the writers can do to recapture the suspense they had in season 1. And the inevitable hype surrounding a second season will only increase the level of disappointment fans are set to experience. Of course, that's just my take. If you disagree, sound off in the comments. If you made it this far, do me a favor and like the video. If you enjoy the content I'm making, feel free to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.